I don't remember seeing it. What is their projected soft and hard opening?
It really is dependent on the HVAC system being installed. They're probably going to be ready before we are.
We're still looking for bids for that.
Bids will be opened on the 3rd and awarded the third evening of the 3rd. It's really going to be a key on how fast the equipment can get here. They said they can be ready to open. They feel they can be ready to open by April 1.
The HVAC isn't going to be ready for that, I don't think.
Yeah, that's what I'm fearful of.
Maybe we won't need it.
That means,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, because that room, the only area that was bad, right, was over the restrooms in the hallway? That like just physically wasn't working, or? I mean, come April,
The
can we keep
system's
that place
basically,
at 70? or
it's
60?
basically not working now.
Okay.
They've ripped and tore enough that it's not working.
But they're gonna use the ductwork that's there, most of it, right?
No, they're not.
I
They're gonna
thought-
put their own ductwork in the window room. They're gonna use their own ductwork. There's some modifications that need to be made in the bathroom area and the hallway. But then the other 2 banquet rooms are fine, and so is the kitchen in terms of ductwork.
Hopefully we'll get some good bids on the 3rd.
We've heard interest from 3 or 4 that have gone out and looked at it.
Violet's over?
Rylitz was reached out to. I don't know that they actually are bidding on it. Leopold, another one that starts with an L, Ames was out. So it's like 4 or 5.
Be nice
Yeah,
to-
Ames Construction has its own HVAC
Okay.
contracting operation underneath the general contractor banner.
Okay, well,
Bob Alexander reached out from Brubaker. So I'm not sure if he's gonna do anything or not.
This is now a prevailing rate.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
not sure we will be. We're not fond of doing prevailing rate work.
I thought we were gonna buy that.
How's that?
I thought we were gonna get around that with this authority.
It's never that easy.
Okay.
Cindy, do you have an idea of, I only ask because of the way you presented that I guess the ordering process, or is there a back order of, the commercial HVAC units that we can expect some level of lag time for delivery?
I think everything these days is there's a lag time. Doug might be a better person to answer that in terms of equipment.
A lot of supply chains are just backed up, dating back to last year because of the virus situation.
Mm.
There's more just-in-time production. Order it, then they produce it. There's not a lot of inventory laying around.
I just put this out here and hopefully we won't need it. But perhaps we should be looking or thinking about portable air conditioning for this facility. If it's even available. Because if they're gonna be in business April the 1st, I'd like to have something they can live with.
I mean, we certainly can talk to them, but at this point, they told me if we don't have the HVAC system in place, they're not willing to open, even if they are ready. They feel that there's going to be disruption as they place the units and connect the units into the window room, that it would cause them some concern. But that's always subject to change.
I didn't look at the docs that closely. Is there a schedule with a completion date? Or is it X amount of time after whenever the start date is?
I couldn't tell you that.
I was just curious because then my next question would be if there was any kind of liquidated damages or anything else built into the documents.
Mhm.
I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just curious because I didn't study it that close to see.
I did ask them to put in there that they have to place the order within 2 weeks of award. But I didn't look at the liquidated damages part.
I'm kind
And
of.
I think once we get the proposals in, we should be able to de-scope, the proposals. It's not a situation, from what I understand with what Cindy explained to me, is that we have to automatically go with the low bidder. So, it could come down to price, availability of equipment and availability to mobilize. So all, and man the job and get it done on our schedule. So part of de-scoping, we normally visit critical path schedule with the contractors. So I think that can be done once the bids are here.
Cindy, is that something that we would need to have another meeting before our next authority meeting on the calendar to approve something like that? Or is that from the Board of Supervisors?
At this point, because we're talking about funding, it has moved to the Board of Supervisors. I kind of assumed that the authority is supporting the project. They're wanting to move forward. They also recommend, I believe, to the supervisors to move forward with the bids. So at this point, the bids will be presented to the Board of Supervisors on the 3rd for hopefully an award.
Okay, I just want to make sure the process is not held up by our board, voting on something. So, okay. Any other questions or comments regarding blue collar lease HVAC at the moment? I will move on. Jim, if you don't mind, I'd like to address the cell tower on the golf course before we get, any golf update, unless you would prefer to go first.
No, that's fine.
Okay. From what, Cindy, from what you had provided, I guess right now it's just exchanging legal language between the cell phone tower company and Frank and his team. Is there anything else that we would need to discuss as a board?
Now, the last time I talked to Frank, he spoke to their attorney on the 6th of January. Their attorney indicated he would have something to us hopefully by our meeting tonight, but there is nothing, so. And I can't tell you how
Okay.
many times back and forth that agreement has gone between the attorneys.
Gotcha. And there hasn't been any, I'm just curious, there's no negotiations as far as price or anything that they are discussing. Is that correct?
No, there's not. This is just language of the agreement. Once we have that language back and forth, that we have something to look at, then I think, I'm not quite sure who you want to negotiate. Well, actually, I think you did tell staff to handle that. But we can certainly
Mhm.
back to the authority and, or a subcommittee of some sort to take a look and negotiate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I guess at this point, we're just waiting for more information on the cell phone tower at this point. I guess now, Jim, if you have any updates on golf course operations or anything that you'd like to provide from the previous months, the microphone is yours.
Yeah, the reports, we had a, strong finish to the year in November, December. Currently, all members have renewed. We're just waiting on 6 members that are waiting for bonuses that have been held up. So once they come in, probably this month or next month, we'll have complete renewal of all members except for one that passed away. And then we've got 3 new members currently. in January, we've had another great month. We're going to match the revenues that we did last year. And it's just seeing what the weather does going forward.
Great to hear. Any questions for Jim?
Jim, have you been able, I can't remember if you've had a discussion with the authority just to give an insight as to your thought process on outings?
Well, the outings will depend on what the restrictions are. But beyond that, we're looking at eliminating outings that are in the afternoon on weekends, just because of the way they disrupt play. Or we'd have to go up quite a bit on the pricing to accommodate for the times we block out in the morning that we lose revenue to accommodate the event at 1 o'clock.
Aren't most outings usually on Mondays or Tuesdays typically, Jim?
If we were a private club, but unfortunately, typically it's weekends, and then Friday's a big tournament day for us. So majority we have in the mornings that are the money makers, and they don't affect play in the afternoon. It's the afternoon tournaments that you've got to block off at least 4 to 5 hours of your morning times, which doesn't make sense when you're trying to accommodate an event that's paying a cheaper price to your prime time.
Well, now that the food option, might be more attractive to those folks who'd be holding their events maybe at a country club, maybe perhaps, that, getting our hat in the ring on that business, it might be a real opportunity. I don't know how your Mondays are, but I assume it's not what Saturdays and Sundays are, correct?
Currently, we've got 3 leagues that play on Monday mornings. So obviously we don't have room for any other events. And then Wednesdays are taken up with a senior league. Thursdays are taken up with the ladies league. So Friday and Tuesday are really the only days that we would have morning events, and then obviously weekends.
What time do the morning folks, do they go off all through the morning? The groups the leagues that play in the morning on Monday?
Yeah, they go off tea times. So they start at the, once we open, and then they usually go until about 11 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, I guess the only thing I would ask would be the events on Friday afternoons. Obviously that probably cuts into a large portion of the business that you guys would do. Is there a way that you can, I would say, open that up possibly for events where, you would have maybe twice the play that you normally would? I know just from, golfing at certain outings where they have, and it's, from a player standpoint, it's not the funnest thing because it turns out to be, 5 or 5.5 hours. But where you have group 1A, group 1B, you're doing a shotgun on every single hole. So you have, you end up having 36 groupings. I would assume that would hopefully increase the revenue for the course with outings of that size. Would there be a way, I guess, where you could maybe filter out the smaller outings on specific days and, maybe something of that size, try to put that on like a Friday afternoon if that would be their preference?
Yeah, it's all dictated on the number of players they're going to have. We have very few events that are a full field, which would be 144. Typically, there are 90, even 80 players topping out at 100. So you do a modified shotgun versus a full shotgun for those.
Hey, Jim, I like your idea about adjusting the prices and, based on the days. Perhaps you could make Friday afternoons for groups, more expensive and make Tuesdays less expensive in terms of greens fees. Likewise with Saturdays, if, just increase your fees for the outings. Seems like a good way to go.
Yeah, and that's what we're looking at, crunching the numbers to see what makes sense and see what kind of increase we'd need to do to offset that revenue loss.
Good.
Okay, any other questions for Jim? All right. Well, thank you, Jim. Just going back to the agenda, looks like old business. We have, we already really discussed the HVAC replacement project. I don't believe there's anything else there that we need to address. So we'll, if there's no other new or old business, move on to new business. And we all received Cindy's email about the fire alarm proposal. Cindy, if you want to just, I guess, explain that a little bit and see if there's anything that we need to address from a board perspective.
So this company is currently installing the security system for blue collar. So she reached out to my office and asked if we'd be interested in a fire system. And I know Mike O'Brien as well as Tom had indicated that that might be a worthwhile endeavor even before she reached out, just to protect the asset. So she prepared a proposal. The proposal is not, the cost is not budgeted, of course, because we weren't anticipating it. So it's an unbudgeted expense. And it's $11,500. Well, actually $17,300 if you include the smoke detectors. Now, the facility does have some smoke detectors in it. I don't believe that they're wired in or monitored. This would be a monitored system. What would have to happen is this would have to get a recommendation by the commission, where am I at? No, authority, and go to the Board of Supervisors for funding and moving forward.
Yeah, my thought process in this, Cindy, and I know we've talked about it in the past, is really, it's one thing to protect the building, but to have some sort of fire detection in the building when there's folks in here dining, and I just think it's wise to have the ability to have fire alarms go off and know that, and people will know that they need to get out of the building. Without it, the fire can develop quickly. There's no fire extinguishing, or there's fire extinguishers, but there's no sprinkler system in the building. I just think it's a wise expenditure for the amount of risk management that you get out of having that in the building.
I would tend to agree, Mike. And one question I have, Cindy, is does the township have any requirements as far as fire and smoke detection in commercial establishments?
We've always flown under the radar in terms of our improvements have been such that we never had to meet that code. Same with what's happening now at the renovations, according to Steve Brandville, our building official.
Well, I agree with Mike. I think we really have no choice but to authorize or support your decision to move ahead with installing the appropriate equipment. Mike, what are your thoughts as far as what Blue Collar thinks? Are they aware of the fact that there's not these devices presently installed?
Yeah, I think it wasn't on their radar. It was part of discussions, Dave, but they didn't go beyond, maybe the initial, discussions, about having it, but not about when to do it or who was going to pay for it. We didn't advance the discussions, but
Okay.
I think they're completely in agreement with it. And I think, it'll help insurance costs on some basis, won't it, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, you'll certainly get a credit. I haven't looked at the policy to see what the property cost really is from that standpoint. I mean, it's not going to offset the cost to put it in there, but
Right.
over the course of 5 years, it could. You know, it might.
Is
be-
it
Well,
appropriate, is it appropriate to ask them for some kind of contribution to defray the cost?
I was going to say that, Dave.
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, if you look from my standpoint, you know, what we put in for our deal obviously is the bones of the building. They're the one that's putting in the 300,000 to update it and everything. So I would ask, one, is this, you know, is the cost of this an appropriate cost? Is there something that you can get that's less expensive than what this, you know, individual or the company had quoted us? And two, then, is there any type of cost sharing, or is this 100% going to be paid for by the authority? You know, having Blue Collar be the one that has really the investment in the building. I don't really want to go back to them and ask them for another 11 plus thousand or 20,000, depending on what options you go with. I just, you know, if they're then going to get the cost savings on the insurance side, I think that's at least fair to offset some of what we're going to have to pay for if it does come to us to pay for it.
Well, there's another cost that's involved in this installation. That's going to be monitoring. It's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be grossly inexpensive. I mean, they're going to have to, you know, pay a monthly fee to have it monitored. You know, it could be $50, $60 a month or a little bit more, but I mean, someone's got to pay that. So at a minimum, they should pay the monitoring fees.
Agree.
Yeah, it's on here. It's $360 a month or 360 a year, or $240 a year. It just depends on which way they go. So that's a nominal cost for them.
Just to give you a full context of where we're at here, Joe shared with me the costs that we've spent so far to get them in. And these are just the big costs. We had to replace the water softener out there. Now, the water softener, just for our use, we would not have needed. It really comes into play with the dishwasher. It's needed for the dishwasher. That was $18,000 in round numbers. That's been replaced. It was installed probably 2 weeks ago. We also installed additional electric meters so that we could segregate the metering cost of what their use is versus ours. It was cheaper than rewiring. That was another $5,000. Of course, then we have the HVAC units, which are going in, and then now we have the fire alarm system. So we're going to be going back to the Board of Supervisors next, on the 3rd, requesting for a supplemental appropriation to the budget, to the 2021 budget, to the tune of, assuming that the HVAC comes in at 200,000, to the tune of 244,000 as a supplemental appropriation to the budget, to the golf course budget. So we're racking up costs here. They are struggling.
Mhm.
Their money is going out the door faster than they can put it in. So they are very much in the same situation. But it's things that probably need to be done. Well, most of the things need to be done,
So,
just to give you full context.
so from an owner of real estate's perspective, you know, these kinds of investments, like a new HVAC system that they are obligated to maintain while they're in there, you know, most of those systems have a 15 to 18-year life. The fire alarm system, I have buildings, you know, older buildings in our portfolio that's those alarm systems have not been updated, but are working perfectly fine. You know, we swapped out some devices, some detectors, but they've performed very well. So these kinds of investments that we're talking about aren't sunk costs. They're, you know, regardless of the outcome of Blue Collar's business plan, and hopefully they execute well and are successful there, the building will not have the kind of deferred maintenance or those kinds of things that wouldn't make releasing it or, you know, reletting it. And they've also they're sinking the 300 grand in here on their side, you know, that's going to have some future value to to the space as well. And much of that is in the kitchen as well as the interior fit out.
Yeah, there's
So
definitely.
I'm not arguing that there's not a lot of money being expended, but you really sort of have to have a longer view than what you're spending at the outset here. It's on an amortized basis, it's not a bad investment.
I also mentioned, I think, I remember if I copied the board, but I mentioned to Cindy that if, we need to verify that the price for the smoke and fire system is reasonable, is that this looks like it's underneath the ceiling where you have to have formal bids. And the township could go out and ask for a couple of other quotes just for comparison, which would speed things
sure.
up as far as getting it installed.
And since you already have the scope now defined, it would be easy to get another number or two on this, I think, without question.
Would we be able to do that?
It also-
quickly? Would we be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
do that quickly, given February 3rd as a meeting date?
I can help that happen and I can talk to Cindy offline here for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would certainly help if we could, at least have the timeline of, maybe money like this going out with possibly the first month of payment from blue collar to at least offset some of the cash flow. That might at least help with the conversation with the board of supervisors. But I guess it depends on when they would, when blue collar would want something like this installed, or when they would need to have it installed, and what that would do for their, service if, they have to stop service to do this. So,
Cindy, was this quote
But yeah,
from all wine security?
Yes,
So Ryan, are you suggesting that maybe we could get an extended payment on the work?
I'm just saying, if we end up doing it in April, that coincides with when they open and when blue collar gives us, some form of payment, that, we would not necessarily have to go to the board for, additional funds, that we would have inflows and outflows at least within the same month that hopefully would be somewhat offsetting. So we wouldn't need to, get more money from the township at that time.
well, the expenditure as a whole would have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. So at that point, 17,000 to our budget is not significant. Sorry, Joe. Spending your money. So that wouldn't be a problem. I fear, though, that it's going to have to get sold to the Board of Supervisors to
Now,
do
that quote was
this.
that quote's for the whole building, right? Like
Correct.
storage of the golf carts and pro shop and
Yep.
everything.
I did ask her to
Well-
separate it out, and just the blue collar portion was maybe 4,000 or 5,000 less. Wasn't really significant, considering that probably wouldn't. And she also said that we could add the pro shop on that side at a later date to the system.
So that, I guess, the conversation with the board, would it be easier, and I know that I'm speaking with several board members, but would it be easier if we went to blue collar and told them, hey, for your, I forget the exact amount that they're paying us, but let's say it's, just to make it even, let's say it was 6,000 per month, and we say to them, this is something we think you should do, something we would want you to go forward with. Instead of you paying us April and May rent, use that to do something like this to make sure that the building is, what it should be as far as fire safety. And then we'll start rent in June. That, I would say, would get around that conversation with the board. And maybe it gives them, the blue collar, the ability to then go and maybe find a better price, or it puts it on them to do something like this, as long as we would see the work was actually accomplished and we could verify that, it was accomplished. Is there any reason that would be not worth, I guess, going that route?
Well, the other way we could set that up, Ryan, would be to have the township pay for it and then get it back as an improvement allowance that would get paid back amortized over some reasonable period. Maybe it's 2 or 3 years, but they're paying back the township for the dollars that are spent. It's at some sort of reasonable interest rate so that, we give them additional runway without having to make the initial investment, and they can start paying us back, to your point, maybe when they're generating some revenue. We do that all the time with our leases.
I like that proposal, Mike.
That makes sense. I like that.
And that proposal, would that be the cost associated with just the square footage that they're leasing or the expense for the whole building?
Well, it would be their pro rata share of that for what we're doing with their space. And then, of course, some of this has to do with, and I'm not sure that anybody else is going to beat All Wine's price because they're putting the base system in, which they'll slave off of with the fire. So I think you can probably say, look, you're gonna owe, and think about that. They owe us, let's just call it $6,000 just for discussion purposes. So that's $500 a month if they paid it off in a year, and it's $250 a month if they paid it off in 2 years, plus the interest.
I'm not against that proposal.
Are you for it?
Somebody want to try to wordsmith that into a motion?
If I could just say, number one, I think, and I guess, Mike, you're going to be able to help us provide this, the second, is some type of a second proposal
Right.
should be required. That's number one. My other thought here is that is this, not that we want to, is this a Cadillac system or the Chevrolet? I don't want the Volkswagen, but I don't know that we need the Cadillac. And then I do like the Mike's plan or suggestion that this be amortized over some time as a reimbursement back to the township, if that's possible.
I think, one, I know for a fact that most everybody's using Honeywell equipment. I'm not sure what they proposed, Cindy. But typically,
Potter?
what is it?
Says Potter Fire Alarm Control Panel?
I'm not familiar with that. So yeah, I'd have to research that, but typically we use, we tend to use better equipment. So let me just do a quick research on that, tonight and see what that looks like.
Yeah, the proposal is part of the agenda packet, if you have a chance to take a look at it.
Okay.
And I can send everyone the other one that just was for blue collars portion. So we already have that number.
I mean, it's just a thought, but perhaps we only need equipment in the kitchen. And would that, and if that's the case, would that substantially reduce the cost? I'm just thinking out loud.
Now, there probably already is some kind of an Ansel system in the cooking area.
Yeah, there is, Doug. There's definitely an Ansel system in the hood. So that's already there, and that was part of their they're paying for that. I say paying for that, I think they're using what was in place, if I'm not mistaken, and they're just making sure it's serviceable. But I don't know, I think that Dan might be able to provide an opinion about fires. I mean, generally, it could be electrical, it could be, it's not always a grease fire or something that happens. And if that happens, the Ansel system is there. So it's usually protecting you against, the unforeseen in a lot of cases.
Mike, what's your experience been with the buildings that you've leased with only providing fire and smoke for a portion of the building?
Well, we are always held to the code that, so depending on the square footage, the type of construction of the building is, all that drives what, for instance, if it's under 10,000 feet and or I think it's 10 or 12,000 feet. And depending on the type of structure, it's not always necessary to put sprinkler in. But in the cases where we don't do that, we always put in fire detection in almost every case, without exception.
I really believe that the entire building should be equipped with fire and smoke protection. And to meet it, for the small differential dollars we're talking about over the life of the lease that these people are going to sign, I think it's really in everyone's best interest to make sure the entire building is at least covered.
I agree with you, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.
And I agree. I think one of our exposures here is where we store all of these golf carts. They're all electric. They're being charged at times when staff's not there, so that would be my concern.
Is there no fire detection at all within the building currently? I mean, is that a new concern for us now that we don't have anything in there at all that we would need to put in?
We have smoke detectors.
But not attached to,
Not attached to a monitoring system.
so essentially if
So if something happens overnight, no one's there.
Right.
unless somebody driving past sees smoke.
Right.
Or hears, I guess one of the neighbors could potentially hear the alarm, but
Or in worst case scenario, if something happens in the pro shop or the snack bar and you have diners upstairs, now you have a concrete, well, it's not all concrete, most of it's concrete floor between them, but the diners above would not, well, they may or may not hear the smoke detector go off. Or if there's something
But
going.
Cindy, if off of Mike's plan, if we're gonna do the work, we would have to pay all wine up front, which to me, that still seems like we would have to go to the Board of Supervisors and ask for that. Would my assumption be that if we have a plan for us to get repaid for that, that would be an easier conversation to the board?
It would be an easier conversation, but it'd still have to go to the board.
So that doesn't alleviate that conversation.
No, because the authority really doesn't have any funds to enter into a contract with anybody. So it would have to be a contract with the township.
Okay.
So are we left with,
Or
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ryan.
sorry, but I just wanted to clarify. Or Mike, were you saying that Blue Collar would put the money up front and then we would pay them back over a time? You're saying that the township would pay for it up front and then we would recoup that cost from Blue Collar.
Yeah, since I've been close to this, so I was close to the transaction from the beginning, I know that they had gone out to the banks to try to get bank financing, and these guys are funding all this out of pocket. So they're using their own personal equity to fund this. So I think it's going to be a hard discussion for them to be talking about something in today's dollars. It might be easier to be talking about something that would occur downstream that's based on their revenue. Well, I should
Gotcha.
say based
Okay.
on the timing of their revenue, not necessarily how much revenue.
Okay. So either way, yeah, we'll have to go to the board to ask for the capital for something like that. Okay. Is that something, Cindy, that we need to, I guess, put a motion through on, or are we, at this point, do we want to get another quote for this type of work and then possibly address this at our next meeting? I assume that this wouldn't need to be put in place until closer to when they would be opening.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you install a fire system. I
Well,
would, it's easier
To-
when there's no
it's go-
walls there.
You should be.
it's going to have to go in when their electrical's being run because all
Yeah.
that low voltage wires got to go up and the devices have to go up. So it won't be something they could wait to do until the very end. It's, I think the rough wiring would occur probably in the next couple of weeks once all the walls are in place. So they can run the wire, either over through the ceiling or up a wall or whatever. And then the devices, that's something, Ryan, that you probably wouldn't put in until closer to your end date of your construction.
Okay.
So perhaps
So-
we just need a motion to approve the installation of this fire and smoke system at the Four Seasons facility for the amount indicated, subject to receiving a second bid, without awarding the contract to Allwine.
I think that's the right thing to do. I was curious as to what our charge was here and how formal the recommendation needed to be. I think you're on the right track.
Yeah, I think essentially you're going to be supporting the fact that you want a fire system in Four
Yes.
Seasons. The question is who's going to do it and at what cost? So yes, you are recommending basically what you just said.
We're
Okay.
just changing the scope here.
You might want to mention in the motion at a cost not to exceed whatever the current quote is.
I'm not you sure you want to do that? What if they're at the low end of the spectrum? I mean, we kind of have an idea of what this might cost, but I'm not sure we should do that.
Specify an amount or approve the,
I think the motion should be that the scope of this project includes having a system. Now let's put it out for additional bidders.
okay.
So simply recommend, we make the recommendation that we install a building-wide fire alarm system. And then
And
kind
we'll
of
work,
massage it from there.
and just say that we'll commit to getting additional bids for the work that will be submitted to the township supervisors at the February 3rd meeting.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor of Steve's motion for the fire installation and follow-up research on what that would cost? Please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion passed. Cindy, is that something that you'd be able to, or how would we go about getting other bids for that work?
I think Mike's going to put me in touch with somebody that can.
Yeah,
get that
Cindy,
done.
I had a long meeting cancel on me for tomorrow. So I'll take that time and just dedicate it to getting this, get together with you to help you get this out.
Okay.
But Mike, your expectation is that we're going to have to move sooner rather than later on something like that if they're in the construction process right now.
Yes, you don't want to be doing that after the fact. You don't want anything having to be opened up or without question.
Okay. Do we need to set a timeline on something like that, similar to the HVAC system? Where we have a, order after the bid is awarded for 2 weeks? Do we have to, Cindy, do something similar? Or is that less strict as far as timeline?
No.
I can tell you of all the trades, this particular trade, I've not had trouble with them manning a job or meeting a schedule. They're kind of like painters. They come in when they usually expect to be in there, and they usually can divert crews, pretty readily. The installation isn't that long usually for these kinds of things.
We have 60 days to act on this, according to the document. So we should be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think,
But that's got to coincide with approval from the Board of Supervisors, which won't, I guess, Cindy, would you make that, or would you bring that to them at the next Board of Supervisors meeting
If we have the
for
second
the
quote,
funds?
yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
Yes.
I think the
Yeah.
goal would be to have another option by that meeting to see, to allow them to make a decision. Because I think our real timeline is getting somebody in there when these walls are open, kind of like Mike said, so that they can be more efficient and be done with it rather than opening up other walls.
And that meeting is next Tuesday,
Wednesday.
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 next Wednesday. So we've got a week to get, I guess, another bid for that.
Right. But the hard work's been done. getting
Okay.
Their numbers, their information, and,
Blank it out and use it as
Yeah.
a scope of work.
yeah,
Yeah, one site visit from the group that will be competing. That's all they'll need. And then they'll have all the hardware and specs that they need. And I don't think it'll take long for them to take it off and provide a quote.
Okay.
So assuming we get a second quote, should we have presence, the authority at the board meeting?
it wouldn't hurt. No,
I mean, I figured I
Tom
was,
can handle it.
No, I'm just saying, yeah, come to the meeting. I would never,
I plan on coming
I
anyways to see the
encourage you
bidding.
to do that.
Well,
All I'm
actually,
saying is, we've made the decision now, we're gonna do this. And we're gonna do it by accepting the lowest bid, and the board is they're the people that will actually make the final decision on it.
Ask him.
I actually have a question. When would the authority, in terms of timing, circle back with Blue Collar as far as the suggestion of them trying to help pay for the costs?
We can do it sooner than later. Explain to them what we're doing and why we're doing it, and that there's a benefit to them on the insurance side, and just, they can easily say no, I mean,
Yeah.
but it'd be nice to know that, so when you go to the supervisors, you'll know whether they're committed to do that or not, or can do it.
That sounds good. Yeah.
By the 3rd, right, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And I'm trying to think if there was, and Mike, you might be familiar with this, was there anything in the lease that requires us to do something like this? Or is there anything that obligates us legally, or?
No.
Okay.
No, this, by the way, this risk transcends what we're doing with Blue Collar, okay? So the building in general has more uses in it than Blue Collar, and it currently is unprotected. I just think it just, from the township side, if I'm sitting in the supervisor's seat, I would be saying, wow, we really need to cover this risk, with something, whether that's, it's already insured, but it certainly would be better, to not have a total loss if we can detect a fire. And you've got Landisville Fire Company right down the street. So, you've got, fast response time. I think it's definitely something that is prudent for the township to consider.
Okay.
Tom, I'm not trying to
Yeah, I would
overreach,
agree.
but do you think that that's accurate?
Say again?
I just said, I'm not trying to overreach. I just want to say, do you think that's accurate, that the supervisors will understand the risk?
Oh, I think so. I think they need to understand that they've been flying under the radar screen here for quite a while.
Yeah.
To this type of a risk, and it's time we deal with it.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns about the fire alarm proposal? Okay. Moving on, next piece of agenda item would be to address the minutes from our November 24th meeting. Did anyone have any questions or comments, concerns about the minutes? I would make a motion
accept
to
the minutes. Oh, I'll second it, Ryan.
Okay. All in favor
I'll
of
third it.
approving, all in favor of approving the minutes from November 24th, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, meetings or minutes passed. Is there any public comment?
We have no public.
Ooh,
The only thing
Good.
I want to say is that email response, I think that came from your office back to that individual. You had made mention about the 14th green,
Mhm.
but I think it's more fairway. Not that it's going to present a question, a problem.
Colin doesn't play golf.
I pointed that out to him at lunch.
So when you say 14th green, that's like in their backyard almost.
Yeah, no, I
Versus
Yeah.
1,000 feet plus
I
away from
pointed it
that
out
green.
to him. He kind of understood.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I was expecting somebody to be here with us telling them that it was going to be next to the 14th green, but, so I didn't know if that was corrected or relayed, but I'm sure as we get further down this process, we'll have more people sitting in the
Somebody
chairs.
will,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, Cindy, from your email, I was expecting there to be some public comments about the cell phone tower, just from what I had heard from previous other meetings in regards to that topic.
And I think the conversation too, I don't know if it was mentioned in the email, but she was reading the minutes or watching the video or something, so. I'm sure she'll be watching.
I didn't check the, okay. All right, so no public comment. I would make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
second.
All in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed, I would assume. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too.